I don't mention the name of our company anymore due to the fact that I'm on Facebook and YouTube saying all kinds of controversial things, and I know how internet people are. When you say things that offend them, I have a lot of experience with that. But I'll tell you this about our workplace. We're not only colleagues, we are friends. We are friends and colleagues. We associate in our personal lives. On the job, nobody's out to get anybody. Everybody wants to see everybody else succeed. We're all on the same side. We actually like each other. We get along. We associate privately in addition to our work on the job. It's a very collegial workplace. Dress is very casual. We don't have a lot of strict standards with regard to dress. In fact, it's probably one of the most casual places you've ever seen. There are not a lot of outside visitors in the office. We basically deal with other parties through phones, fax, and email, and once in a while there may be the occasional visit. Nobody's trying to undercut anybody. We don't do blame shifting. We're all on the same side, and we are legitimately friends. Does that friendship affect the way we do our work, the way we conduct our business? Absolutely it does. There's nothing wrong with that. You often hear people say you can't mix business and friendship, or you can't mix work and friendship. Well, actually you can if you have the right people. And you can have situations where people actually do get along with each other, actually do socialize with each other, actually do care about each other. Dan and I don't want people calling us Mr. This is strictly a first name organization. And we know that we're not the all-powerful know-it-alls of everything. Our judgment isn't always the best. The fact that we may be directing things doesn't mean that we are superior people or super people in any way. And the main group got to see that during our little training exercise experience out in the Chihuahuan Desert near Van Horn, Texas last summer. We had a little situation where the heat just got the best of some of us, and so we were both seen at our weakest or most vulnerable, you might say. And so we're not super people, we're very human. But this is a very collegial, friendly work environment. We're all on the same team. We want the organization to succeed. We want each other to succeed, not just strictly in professional lives, but in our personal lives. It's a group of friends who really do care about each other and happen to work together. You know what? That's unusual. I hope that whoever you are and whatever you do, you find a workplace like that, because it's a great thing to look forward to going to work every day, because you work with great people, you do work you love, you actually are friends with the people, you actually like each other, and even though you may be running the place, they still treat you like a friend and you treat them like one, and that friendship absolutely does impact the way we do the business. It's just a great environment. Collegial, friendly, mutually supportive, we're all in it together. That's a wonderful way to work. I hate to tell you this, but your chances of finding a workplace like that are not very good in the United States of America, because most workplaces in the United States have a degree of hostility. There are lots of companies where blame shifting is everyday business. Everybody's always trying to figure out who made this or that mistake and who they can pin it on to make sure that they don't get in trouble. And I used to work for a company in the telecommunications business where I was actually told one time that it's to your benefit to undercut other people and make other people look bad, and that's why they're always keeping these records on all the mistakes that everybody makes. And you know, Joe, who was our supervisor, was in there writing bad things down all the time so that he could use them against you in evaluations and other circumstances. And then I worked for a healthcare company one time. God, let me tell you, that was awful. That was a place where they monitored phone calls all the time. You'd be on your desk phone talking to somebody, and this red light would start flashing, and they'd be monitoring your phone call. They watched email all the time. They had a really strict dress code. They spent a lot of time trolling employees' social media accounts to see if anybody said anything remotely negative about that company. And then they'd get rid of people because the head of that organization was absolutely paranoid. And I guess the reason for his paranoia, that he had good reasons for it, because that organization to this day does have a horrible reputation. And the strange thing about it is a lot of that reputation has to do with bad employee relations. That's one of the things dragging down their reputation, yet they're so worried about what somebody's going to say about them on social media. But they had cameras everywhere. They were monitoring computer traffic. They were listening to telephone calls. They were telling people to keep their office doors open. All kind of just open hostility. Now, that was one of the worst examples, but I've seen lots of examples of that over the years. Unfortunately, in the United States, we have a situation where the employee-employer relationship often tends to be adversarial. And this was true at a retail company I worked for one time, even in that retail company, when you got good managers, they couldn't do a lot for you just because of the way the company operated. Because the way the company operated was this extremely intense pressure and spying and monitoring. And even in this retail company, the monitoring wasn't as bad as it was, the corporate spying wasn't as bad as it was in that healthcare place. But still, it was an adversarial relationship, and you knew that. And even if you had managers that you got along with pretty well when you worked there, there was still an adversarial relationship. It was, all kind of ridiculous expectations, and you have a lot of that in workplaces too. You have multitasking, and that comes because of downsizing and right-sizing sometimes. People are expected to do 15 things at once and expected to do them well, and in fact nobody can do that. And in a lot of workplaces, you really have to watch your back around your coworkers and your superiors, because everything is in a constant state of conflict. And you know why that is? Management at a lot of companies like to keep employees at each other's throats, because as long as they're all mad at each other, they're not getting on the same side. Because if you had everybody walk out at one time, that could force the company to do some things. So it really is in the interest of a lot of companies to keep civil war going in the workplace. And companies in the United States, and you see this a lot in the retail business, that's a prime example, and you can see it in the food service business as well. Those are two lower level companies, but it's really all over the United States workforce, where the environment is just a pressure cooker, and everybody's looking to make themselves look better than somebody else, or to make somebody look bad. And you have companies that are engaging in all kinds of spying to see who might be saying something negative about the company so that they can take action. And workplaces in the United States, unfortunately, are just extremely negative sometimes. You know where I think the word frenemy came from? It probably came from the workplace. Because from what I've seen in a lot of workplaces in the United States over the years, you really have to watch your back around your coworkers, because they will throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. And they do that to protect themselves, to protect their own jobs. They will make you look bad so that they can look better, and that is a very effective technique with a lot of companies. I've been told that. So how do you deal with the issue of workplace relations in the United States? Well, I just described our work environment, how it is collegial and friendly. We actually care for one another. We actually are friends, and nobody's going to lose their job over some stupid reason. It would take something damn serious for somebody to get kicked out. One of our friends, it would take something extremely serious to have a parting of the ways. Because we're not going to get rid of somebody for some capricious reason. We tend to look at everybody as partners. Most companies don't do that, in spite of the fact that they claim that they do. Most of them maintain this adversarial relationship, and you can hear that in comments from millionaires like Nick Hanauer and Dan Price and some others who have decided to do things differently and that other companies should do some things differently. But this area of relationships with your coworkers and your superior, that is a very tricky deal in the United States, and it is fraught with all kind of problems. So what have I learned about most American workplaces over the years that would be helpful to people either starting out in the workforce or who have been in the workforce for a long time? Because a lot of people who have been working out in the workforce for a long time really don't know these things. This is general advice that I would give most working people in the United States based on my experience. And I can only tell you what I've learned. It's up to you whether you want to follow it or not. But I do hope that people who might hear this would give some thought to these things I'm saying about workplace relationships, because it really is a blame shifting type of environment. It really is a type of environment where people will absolutely throw you under the bus if they think they can get some advantage from it. We have this culture of, one has a good job and the other one has a less desirable job, and you got 3 or 4 people, and if you've got the desirable job, they all decide they want your job, and so they start conspiring and running to the office to give bad information on you anytime they can, and all kinds of horrible behavior. So what is a word to the wise? How can you protect yourself in the workplace by personal relationships? Well, here's a big one. Don't date coworkers. Just don't do it. Now, there are all kinds of issues concerning sexual harassment that it's real easy to get into. And so how do you avoid sexual harassment? It's very simple. You can't do anything. You can't do anything at all. If you ever do ask somebody for a date, ask one time and that's it. And do not pursue it anymore. The best advice I can think of is just don't date coworkers, because I've seen situations where people got in relationships and they tried to continue to work together and it just didn't work out. It caused all kind of problems. I knew of one case where a person lost their job over something like that. And even if it doesn't come to that, you still have one or the other is going to come to work and tell all your personal business, and that's going to cause problems because you have to work with these people, and I've seen that happen too. My advice, don't date coworkers. I have another piece of advice too. Don't socialize with coworkers off the job. Now really, think about this. You go and spend your time at this grueling job. Do you really want to even think about that when you're not there? Do you really want to use your off time associating with coworkers? Now, it is possible that you might develop 1 or 2 close friendships at work. And if you really are friends and really do become friends apart from the work, so it's genuine friendship, okay, then maybe okay. But generally speaking, my advice for most people most of the time, don't socialize with coworkers and don't think that they're your friends, because in the work context they may well just throw you under the bus. And then you had a relationship that you thought was a personal relationship and it ends up ruined. My general policy with regard to most coworkers at most kinds of companies, and ours is an exception, but most kinds of companies, most coworkers just don't socialize off the job. Another one, don't add coworkers or superiors to your social media accounts, because there are companies all over the United States who like to monitor their employees' social media accounts to see if those employees are saying something negative about the company, and they do act on it when they find something that they don't like. So my advice is keep your coworkers off your social media accounts. Don't have them on Facebook accounts, and definitely don't have superiors on your Facebook accounts. And with regard to companies monitor social media, be very careful in your public comments, because your public comments can be seen by anybody on or off Facebook, and you may, depending on what your work situation is, want to avoid public comments altogether. If you do have coworkers on your social media accounts, make sure they're on the restricted list, because you definitely don't want people you work with having access to everything you say and everything you do. Now, there can be exceptions, but discretion is the better part of valor. If you think somebody's going to be an exception, you make sure that you really really do get along with them really well. You make sure it's a legitimate friendship, and that would need to be demonstrated outside of work as well, most of the time. But be very, very careful about having coworkers on social media accounts. I generally don't think it's a good idea. And another thing is, you may actually want to consider blocking superiors and coworkers from your social media accounts to protect yourself. So those are just some general ideas about relationships. I think in most American workplaces, you need to keep your coworkers at a distance out of your personal life. I'll never forget, I was working at a retail store one time, and there were a group of employees who had gotten together, socializing at somebody's house, one thing or another. So at least one of them comes back, and she's saying all kinds of horrible things about people there, and I'm thinking, why the hell you got to do that? These people have to work here. Why are you telling all this stuff? Be very careful about who you associate with if you don't want your personal business spread all over the workplace, and who wants that? Now, maybe some of you are more extroverted types and you don't mind if your personal business gets spread all over the workplace. But I'll tell you, if you're known for going out and getting drunk every weekend and doing all kinds of crazy things, and that gets back to your work, it will affect that company's attitude towards you. Don't kid yourself. It definitely will. I used to have a friend of mine back when I worked in the telecommunications business, and he would go associate with some of our coworkers, go out to bars and go out to, well, to put it honestly, I was never into this, I really wasn't, but they would go out to topless bars and all kind of things like that. And this one friend that I'm talking about would get extremely drunk and get into all kinds of trouble and do all kinds of embarrassing things. And they have the trucks at these questionable places emblazoned with ADC Telecommunications, and everybody knew what company they were from, and they would act stupid and get in all kinds of trouble. And then people at work would find out about it, and it got back to the management, and he just had a lousy reputation, people talking behind his back all the time about things he did off the job. Do you want to get embarrassed like that on your job? You have to work with these people. Be very, very careful about relationships on the job. And I'm not just saying this to young people who are just starting to work, because there are people who've been in the workforce a long time and still don't know that coworkers and superiors will stab them in their back, and that companies will spy on them, and their jobs can be affected by things that companies learn on social media accounts. All people in most American workplaces, I hope that you someday get a work environment like the one I'm talking about, because it can be great when you really are friends and you're actually close apart from the job, and it's reflected on the job, and going to work is like going to a second home. That is a marvelous environment. But I'm sorry to tell you, there's not many like that. Most workplaces to a degree have an adversarial environment, and you have to be very, very careful about personal relationships with people that you work with. And those who don't have experience and have never learned this the hard way, well, ignore everything I've said, and eventually you will learn it the hard way. My advice about personal relationships with coworkers and superiors in the United States, with the vast majority of companies, you need to be very, very careful, and don't give anybody any reason to go blabbing about your personal business at work, or give your company reason to act against you because of social media. Go back and listen to what I've said about how to be careful about that. So just a word to the wise: with regard to personal relationships with your coworkers and superiors at most companies in the United States, be very, very careful. And if you get an environment like mine one of these days, thank God or thank your lucky stars, because you will be extremely fortunate indeed. Thank you and have a good day.